completely by accident.
Yeah.
I was a terrible musician in the 80s. I was playing, I was a rhythm guitarist in an R&B band opening for heavy metal acts.
Okay.
So you can imagine how that was going. And the guy who led the band was the only professional musician in the band, and the rest of us were novices trying to catch up, and terrified every time we went on stage because he kept changing up the set just to freak us out.
Okay.
But I really wanted to do that. I thought I really wanted to do that. And I got a day job working in the mailroom of a film company. At that time it was called Empire Entertainment. And we made movies like Reanimator and Ghoulies and From Beyond, all the Puppet Master movies eventually under Full Moon Entertainment. So I got a job in the mailroom, and one of the very first days that I was there, I realized that literally everyone in the building was an actor except for me.
Yeah.
And the head of the mailroom, a guy named Victor Garcia, was casting for a Japanimation program called The Guyver, and he needed a guy with a deep voice. I happen to have the deepest voice in the mailroom. And he asked me if I would come in on the weekend and audition for this thing, and if I auditioned for it, I would get the job right there and just work for the day. But what he really piqued my attention with was that he offered me free breakfast and lunch. And I was a starving musician, so I said, free food, yeah, I don't care what I'm doing. And I had no idea what voice acting was at the time. But we did do a lot of crazy voices in the mailroom. We were just a bunch of idiots in there. There was a guy named Tom Fawn, who was in, you know Tom, yeah. Agumon from Digimon, he's a brilliant actor. And Tommy and I, when we would go out on runs, we were also drivers for the company. We would meet at some point during the day, wouldn't see each other for most of it. And Tom and I do these old Jewish man voices. And so we kind of come up to each other in the parking lot as we're getting out of our cars. Pretend we couldn't see each other. How was your day? Was it nice? Where are we? Who are you? And spit and drool and whatever. And so Victor saw that I could do this, and he goes, dude, your voices are really funny. You got to try out for this thing. So I said, okay, fine. So I come in on the weekend, and he shows me some video of a creature called a zoonoid, ripping the arm off of another zoonoid and beating it with it, basically. And he goes, all right, so what would that sound like? And I look at the screen and I go, and he goes, all right, you're hired. And I went, what, really? That's all there is to voice acting? He goes, and he just started laughing at me. He goes, no, dude, it's gonna be a lot harder than that, just trust me, but I think you'll do all right. But what made him think that I could actually handle the job was that I could match the movements of the creatures on screen because of my musical training. And phrasing of words was also a very musical thing to my ear. Language is a very musical thing. So it just made sense to me. Matching the lip flaps, matching the movements, it all made sense to me for some reason. It was a skill set that I was born with. So I started doing the creature stuff, and then eventually they gave me the part of an old man, and then because of my old man stuff, and then I booked one of the main roles, one of the main bad guys in that show, Guyver 3. And I carried on for 26 episodes of that show. They were so stupid to hire me because I didn't know what I was doing. But at that time we had the benefit of watching each other work. Nowadays when you record anime, you go in one at a time. And it's a very technical process. You're watching your director, you're looking at a script, and you're watching the screen all at the same time. It's like a juggling act. So you really don't want more than one person in the room at a time because it's technical enough without having to babysit a bunch of idiot actors. So, but at that time they would bring 20 people in and we'd be there all day. So I would have the benefit of watching some of the best actors in the city doing their craft. And I would just absorb everything that I could. And basically I stole all of their tricks. And I incorporated it into what I was doing. And after 26 episodes, I felt like pretty confident that I could handle most minor roles. It wasn't until Cowboy Bebop that I actually had a leading role, and I had to carry this character and carry the story with.
What character?
His name was
Spiegel. He was also Jewish.
Spike Spiegel. But I was terrified going into that job as my first leading role, and directed by Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, who is here at the con. Yeah, give her a big hand. Oh, good, yeah. And she was her first directing role. So both of us were scared, but we just sort of worked with each other and tried to do the best that we possibly could. And it was such a beautiful story and great script, and The music was amazing, the visuals were amazing. It was really our job just not to screw it up. But I honestly learned the true art of acting in the process of recording that show, because at the few rare moments where Spike had to become vulnerable were the moments where I had to get in touch with what it truly meant to be an actor, and I had to bring myself to the party in a different way. In the Cowboy Bebop movie, there was a scene between Spike and Elektra in the jail cell, and we had to talk about our deepest pain and loneliness and regret. And to tap into that, it was much harder for me to do that in my own voice than it was to go. That being big, bold characters was easy for me. Being monsters was easy. But actually being vulnerable as a person was the difficult thing. So that's when I really learned how to be an actor and how to be a voice actor rather than just doing voices for cartoons.
Wow, that was a great answer. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Cowboy Bebop, I think, was my first experience hearing your voice on screen, which is awesome for me because that was probably one of the shows that really got me into anime. I'm an artist now, and so thank you for that because I feel like that helped me get there.
Awesome.
So you're at this point now where I would consider you like a legend of voice acting, but you fell into it on accident.
Yeah.
So and you kind of got into this in that last answer, but like how, if it's okay to ask me, like how was that in the beginning? Because you were just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like did you have like a lot of like imposter syndrome kind of feeling when you were doing those gigs and jobs?
Oh, big time. Yeah, I always felt, for the first close to 10 years, I felt like somebody's going to figure out that this idiot doesn't know what he's doing, and they're going to hire somebody else, and I could not believe that they kept hiring me. And most of the work that I did at that time, I was working for the same company. It was LA Hero and Zero Limit Productions, and they were friends of mine, and I thought they just kept hiring me because they liked me, and I was a nice guy, and I brought cookies sometimes. But I didn't really believe that I had the chops to become an actor full-time, a professional actor full-time. This was just a hobby for me. I did it because I love to do it. And even more so, I love the people that I was working with. The voice acting community is some of the most genuine, amazing humans I've ever known. And I've remained friends with all of them for 20 years now. In fact, Mary Elizabeth and I have been friends for 18 years, and now we're together as a couple. So, But yeah, that imposter thing, I think a lot of actors go through that anyway. There's always that monkey on your shoulder, especially if you're not getting hired very often. You start thinking, well, maybe I'm not that good at this. Maybe I actually suck, and I've been pulling people's wool for many, many years. And they finally figured out that I'm not qualified for this, and that's a tough thing to shake as an actor. It's a very tough thing to shake. I finally got past that by caring less, I think. And honestly not believing that it was a viable career, because everybody in my life told me that you can't be a voice actor as a career, including my parents and all of my friends and every woman that I'd ever been with pretty much up until the time I was with Mary. But I did it because I loved to do it, and I had several other jobs to support that, and it was just something fun. Since the music didn't work out so well, I stayed at that company, at Empire, which became Full Moon Entertainment, and I became an executive at the film company and worked there for 14 years while I did voiceover on the side. And finally, I quit my job at age 40 to do voiceover full time, so I've been doing it for many, many years. And I, in the process of that, I actually learned how to do it properly. It's like taking the master class, except the master class lasts for 15 years. So I don't recommend that path for all you new voice actors out there. It's really tough. But when I finally made that decision to go into voiceover full time, I quit my job because I booked a 7-Eleven commercial. And I thought that was going to be my ticket out. And the film business was so mean, everybody was so nasty to each other, that the only time I was really happy was when I was with my voiceover friends. And so I became that guy who said, "Oh, thank heaven," at the end of the 7-Eleven commercials. And I thought, sweet, this is the company that's going to buy me my house. And what I didn't realize was that at that time, the rate that they pay you for those things is not nearly what it had been in the past. And there were some people who would do commercials. They would do one big commercial, and it would buy a house for them, literally. 7-Eleven was one of those companies that found ways of marketing so that they could do it through cable TV or radio, which they pay in very small segments. And so it was nice. I'm very grateful to them, but it certainly wasn't enough to build a career on. So that doubt carried through once I started doing the 7-Eleven commercials and quit my job and realized that I went from a 6-figure income to living on credit cards for 3 years and not working as much because the union went on strike. There were a lot of factors there that really took dings in my self-confidence as an actor. And I had to fight my way through that and just remember what started me on that process in the beginning, and it was for the love of doing it. So I just kept doing it for fun. I read at my kids' schools and got a lot of feedback from the kids. They told me either that I really sucked or that I was a pretty good voice actor, and that I did a pretty good job on Dr. Seuss, and that was all the confirmation that I really needed. So I just kept doing it. I just kept doing it, and that's what I recommend to a lot of people too. And no matter how loud that monkey gets on your shoulder telling you you're not good enough, or you're not smart enough, or you're not made for this, you just got to keep doing it if it makes you happy. And it worked out. So far, it worked out pretty good.
That's amazing. That was a great answer. Thank you. I feel like your voice is one of the more recognizable voices I hear, like in either animation or video games. Have you ever been recognized, like on the street, like at a store or something? Has anyone ever been like, "Oh, you're Spike"?
Yeah, it's happening more often now than it ever did, and I think it's just because I do a lot of on-camera stuff now too, against my will. I do a lot of interviews. I hate doing on-camera stuff. I don't like memorizing stuff. I'm really lazy. I don't like being on set, so I don't do TV and film things, but I have done a lot of on-camera interviews, and I've been a lot bigger presence at conventions, meeting you guys and stuff, so there's a lot more awareness about voice actors and what they are and what they do. And that recognition usually happens when I'm at a grocery store, and I'm talking to the cashier, and then somebody's standing next to me, I'll just seem to go, and they're not sure if it's just some weird tick. I don't know what's going on for them, and usually what'll happen is I can see there's recognition going on, and I will never say anything to them unless they say something to me first. If they ask me if I'm a voice actor, I'll admit to that, then they have to figure out who I am. But what usually happens is that something will click in after I go out to the parking lot, and all of a sudden I'll see somebody running behind me with a cart of groceries going, "Dude, wait! Are you Spike Spiegel?" And that's when it happens. It's really funny. It's really funny to see people try. The wheels are turning in there, and I watch them try to figure it out. And I used to, when I first started booking roles where they start making action figures based on my characters, I used to love to go to toy stores and buy all my characters. And if there were kids, I do that still. I'm an idiot. That's one of the best things about doing this job for cartoons. I have shelves and shelves and shelves of my characters now, and I get to play with them and do their voices. But I went into a toy store one day, and I was so excited because there was a little kid who picked up a Guillemot toy from Digimon. And he's looking at it, and he's asking his mom if he can have it. She goes, "No, we came in here for G.I. Joe or something else. I don't know what it was for." And I walked up next to him, and I picked it up, and I do his voice on TV. And I thought, this is going to be a really fun moment for the little kid, and he just looked at me and started screaming. And the mother looks over at me, and she goes, "What did you say to him?" She was after me with her handbag, and I went, "I'm just a voice actor. I just wanted to make him happy." And she goes, "Well, you're not." So I don't do that very often anymore. And kids just can't make that connection. So yeah, somebody came to me today to my signing desk, and they asked me to do a recording for a little kid and one of their friends' kids. And I said, "How old is this child?" And he said, he's 4 years old. And I said, "Well, you know what, I better give you a picture of the character, because otherwise he's just going to be terrified by this old man doing this voice that he loves, and he'll probably traumatize him."
That's awesome. I remember hearing in an interview with you and Rob Paulson that you had a Guinness World Record. Which record was that for?
It's so weird. I had the Guinness record for most prolific voice actor in video games. And at that time it was over 300-something video game voice. I've voiced over 300 video games and multiple characters in those games. So, thanks. Here's the weird thing, is that first of all, it's a quantity award, not a quality award. Well, thank you for that. But when I was a kid, and I think all of us have done this, anybody that knows about the Guinness Book of World Records, everybody sort of wanted to get a world record doing something. I thought it'd be like spitting the farthest or farting the loudest or something. I didn't know, and I sort of lost that hope because I wasn't really that good at anything after I was about 8 or 9 years old. I didn't think anything more about it, and then I get this call from my agent, and she said, Guinness Book of World Records thinks you have the most voices in video games. I said, wow, that's cool. I haven't paid attention. Amazing. So what do we do from here? They're in England, aren't they? And she said, yeah, they are, and you have to prove it. And I said, what? I said, I don't pay attention to any of this stuff. I stopped doing a resume a long time ago. And so it took us 3 or 4 months to go through my IMDb and figure out if that was me in each one of the video games, because I'm not a game player. Most of the games that we record, we're recording under some anonymous name, because everything is top secret. I don't even know the names of my characters sometimes. So I actually had to look at posts that you guys made about your favorite video games so that I could identify whether the character was me or not, and I'm still not sure if the total list is accurate. But now, every year, they contact me and ask me to verify all the new games that are coming in, and so I think we're over 400 games now, something like that. But here's the really funny thing is that when they gave me the award, they wanted to do it at E3, which is a big gaming convention, and I couldn't get a ticket to go to E3, and they were in town from England, so we had to find another place to do it, and so I was working on Legend of Korra at Nickelodeon at the time. And thank you, I love that show. And Nickelodeon was nice enough to allow me to bring the Guinness guys to a session. It was one of our final recording sessions. And they said that when we were done with the session, they could come into the studio and we could do the whole presentation ceremony there. They had cameras and they were going to do a whole thing. And they were running an hour and a half overtime that day. So we couldn't get in the studio, and we're sitting out there in the lobby, and the guys are going, we gotta go, we gotta get to the convention, E3. And I said, well, just give them a few more minutes, please, just a few more minutes. And they said, no, we gotta go. And the guy just stands up and he goes, on behalf of Guinness Book of World Records, here's your award, thanks. And he walks out. Like, oh my God. It was so anticlimactic. It was really sad. So that's the glamour of Hollywood, ladies and gentlemen. And yet I still proudly display it on my wall because it's a Guinness record. It's kind of cool.
Jessica, you have a question?
Yeah, so I'm going to admit something. I play Skylanders with my son, but I play Skylanders for me because I collect them. But I know that you've done a few voices on that, and you said that you have kids. So I'm curious to know, and you said you've done also a lot of other video games. I'm curious to know what your kids think of your voices and what their favorites are, and if they're like uber fans and they have like, oh, Dad's Chop Chop, I have a Chop Chop. So what do they think of that?
Well, my kids are hairy men now. So I'm an old dude. They're in their 20s. They don't play those games anymore. When they were playing games, I'm not even sure. They played a lot of like Crash Bandicoot and I'm not even sure what other games they play. One of my sons plays Dota and World of Warcraft, and I think they've all played Call of Duty, those kinds of games. One of my biggest badges of honor is that I scared my kids by playing Killer Croc in Arkham Asylum. It was literally after all these years of doing all these crazy characters that I tried to scare the kids with. I would come out and do all these disgusting characters. They go, that's really stupid, Dad, try again. Killer Croc was the one thing that just freaked him out, and I was so proud. So, yeah, thank you for that, though. That's awesome.
Yeah, parent, I gotcha.
Yeah? Oh, good.
Well, let's use that as a segue, because I'm assuming you guys all have a lot of questions of your own, right? Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and do Q&A. Are we going to do both or one?
Yeah, both.
Okay, so these, Andre and Jessica have microphones, so if you guys have questions, go ahead and line up behind them. Yeah. So I got a few ground rules for Q&A, just so we can get this. Everybody only gets one question, all right? I don't want no two-parters, four-parters. You get one question. If you have another one, you can totally go back into the end of the line, but we'll make sure we get everybody to go.
It's reserved.
And make sure your questions are pretty concise. Feel free to give, definitely gush. Tell Steve that you love him, but don't write a book. All right, guys. So, Andre.
Hey, so first off, my compliments on your work. My question is, since we're in a period of reboots, what classic cartoon series you would like to see rebooted the most?
Oh, what a great question. Wow. Well, they're kind of doing a reboot of the Bugs Bunny stuff. I love that, with whatever they're calling that now. I think it's the new Looney Tunes, right?
Yep.
And I've gotten to work on that show. I've gotten to do a bunch of characters on that show. It's really fun. That was kind of my jam. I loved Looney Tunes stuff. And I'm not, I hope it's translating to this new audience. Do you guys like Looney Tunes? Yeah? Okay. And the people who are doing it, they're just amazing. That would kind of be the number one for me. I hear they're doing a new Jetsons, something like that.
Yeah, I heard about it. There's not a whole lot about it.
Yeah, I don't know how well that's going to play. We'll see. I hope they do a really good job on it. I don't know. That was kind of my era. It was the Hanna-Barbera stuff. I love that. Thank you for that. Awesome. Another question.
Okay, hi. Oh, wow, that's terrifyingly loud. So, what has been your favorite role? Like, what has impacted you the most that you've done?
Those are two different questions, because favorite role is a really tough question to ask, because they're all, it's okay, a lot of people ask that question. It's hard for me I never am very good at answering the favorite question about anything, because I love a lot of different things, but I don't really obsess over any one thing. And that's what I admire so much about so many of the people in this room, is that you guys will find something that you love and you will dive in deep. And you'll know everything about it. I don't know everything about anything. So to me, for it to be a favorite character, I would have to really dive deep into that character. And so my common stupid answer is that whatever character I'm doing Monday morning is my favorite character, because I'm still employed. There are certain standouts that sort of tickle my little fanboy fancy, like Starscream, because I love Transformers. Wolverine, because he's a classic character.
Gilman, just because he's really innocent, and I didn't get to play a lot of innocent characters back then.
I played a lot of baddies. But the one that's changed my life, well, actually there's two characters that have changed my life more than any others would be Tom from Toonami and Spike Spiegel. So many other things, they led to so many other things. Spike in particular actually inadvertently led to Legend of Korra. I found out after recording that whole first season of Legend of Korra that the creators of that show were big Bebop fans. And they didn't tell me that till we were done recording. It was pretty awesome. We did a show called Megas XLR. And they... nice! Chicks still big giant robots. That show was an offspring of Cowboy Bebop too. The guys were fans of that. And so I owe a lot of the best things in my life to Cowboy Bebop, including Mary Elizabeth. So, yeah, it was cool. Did that answer it?
Yes.
I think I answered. Okay, good. Okay.
Yes, sir. I wanted to ask, usually when you sign on for a job or recording session, I suppose, how long and how much time do you usually take to, I suppose, do all your lines or do the character?
It depends. It could take me from 45 seconds to 15, 20 days of work, depending on the job. So like video games, for example, something like Mass Effect. I would walk into the room and they'd give me a stack of paper about that thick, and we'd have to get through at least 1,000 lines in 4 hours, and I would have to do several incarnations of those lines and all of what they call sound sets, so all the fighting actions and reactions. So that's super time intensive. There are other things like anime where we've got to cram in 3 episodes in 2 hours just because they can't afford to pay me any more to do that. And we just have to keep going as fast as we possibly can. Sometimes I'll go and do 2 lines on a show just because that's all my character shows up for, and I will be literally in and out of there in 45 seconds. It's different for every single job I book. Commercials are really funny because generally I only have 2 or 3 lines, but these guys have to justify their job, so they'll have me do those 2 or 3 lines 30, 40, 200 times. To the point where saying the word "the" doesn't even sound like English anymore. So, you know, when you're coming into voice acting, you have to be prepared for anything. It can really be the easiest thing you've ever done or the hardest thing you've ever done, and it's not necessarily dependent on how many words you have. It's just dependent on how competent you are in that role and how confident the other people are on the other side of the glass. So that's a great question, though. Hi.
Hi. Do you still do music? Because earlier you mentioned a band, so I'm just curious.
I'm sort of getting dragged back into it. I love music. I've always loved music, and I started out playing in coffee houses with just an acoustic guitar. I used to be a singer-songwriter. Not very good, but I loved it. But after being in the music business for 6 years, I learned to hate the business of music. The people were terrible. They were so awful. And everything about the music business was just mean and nasty and sort of oriented to break you down, honestly. And playing in that band, I was the only guy in the band that had a truck, and I was the only guy in the band that had a job. And and back then it was all pay to play. So when we wanted to play at a club, we had to prepay for all the tickets, and they would give us a minimum amount of tickets, and I would have to pay all that in advance. And we'd literally go door to door selling them to try to make up the money. And in the course of several years, it cost me like 30 grand just to keep the band going. So that was awful. And once we broke up, I didn't know if I ever wanted to do that again. Plus, my partner stole all of my equipment. So I was pretty soured on the music business for many years, and I stopped playing, I stopped singing, and I kept a lot of my guitars. I still had them hanging on the wall. And little by little, I keep surrounding myself with musician friends, and a lot of people in the voiceover industry are musicians too, and they keep sort of dragging me back in. And I've been playing little things here and there. In Hawaii last year, I picked up a $20 ukulele and learned how to play in a couple days, enough where Mary and I did some songs at a panel, some bebop songs on ukulele, dripping wet coming out of the ocean. It was awesome. And I just played at a friend's wedding in Italy a couple of months ago. Mary and I brought my guitar there, and we played a bunch of songs for their wedding. And I was kind of terrified because it was all a bunch of voice actors, people I knew, and most of them were singers. So the fear factor is pretty deep for me. But I'm also surrounded constantly by high-level musicians too. One of my dearest friends is Logic. I'm wearing his shirt right here. Yeah, you can give it up for Logic, it's okay. And he had me do some voiceover on his last 2 albums, and he's an anime fan and a video game fan, and I'm surrounded by some of the best musicians in the world just hanging out with him. So I think little by little I'm going to get back into playing, and eventually, hopefully, to a level where I feel comfortable playing in front of people again. But that's one of my greatest fear things at this point. I've got a lot of attachment to failing with music, and not that I'm afraid to fail, because I do that every day, but to do that on that level is pretty rough. You know, he asked me if I wanted to, if I could play on his next album, and I don't know, I got a lot of work to do. But I really want to do that. I love guitar and I miss it, and they're hanging on my wall as art, and they mock me every day.
If you do it, good luck.
Thank you, I'm gonna need it.
Hey Steve, first of all, I love you.
I love you too, man, thank you.
You know, I first heard your voice like 15 years ago or whatever, I was 11 or 12, and you know, Toonami, Adult Swim. First few characters I fell in love with you was like Spike and Akichi and GTO and Mugen. And you said that like Spike was kind of one of your most influential roles. I was wondering, do you kind of like get into method acting, and or like when you do characters and do major roles, do you ever feel like you kind of gain attributes from doing those characters for a while, or that they kind of like influence your personality, or you kind of walk away from doing those sessions kind of feeling like those characters or something like that, or?
Yeah, I do, to my own detriment sometimes. Seriously, if I've had a big fight scene, I actually feel it in every muscle in my body as though I've been there. Because part of acting, and I think some of the best actors have said that when they embody a character, that they embody it mentally, physically, spiritually, to the point where it really does become a cellular thing. And walking out of some of the sessions recording Spike, especially after a really cool fight scene, I thought, hey, I'm a badass now. And I'm thinking somebody comes up to me, I'm gonna pull some of that Bruce Lee shit on them. knowing that I would probably die if I came up against somebody who had those kind of skills.
You gotta be like water.
What was that?
You gotta be like water.
I've got to be like water, so that's what I do. I lay down and I flow. But yeah, I mean, I have absorbed a little bit of each of those characters, and vice versa. I think that we all have that in us too. I grew up as a very insecure, bullied, overweight little kid. And so to get to grow up and play characters as cool as Spike or Wolverine or some of these amazing heroic characters, we all have that in us. We just have to find a way to get that out, and it may not necessarily come out in physical form. So for me, my superpower is really just expressing that vocally. So it kind of went both ways. Once I fleshed out those characters, they became part of me, and I walked away with a little more confidence that I had that inside me, and I also got to express it outwardly. So it's an amazing symbiotic relationship with these characters, to the point that when she asked if I had a favorite, I can't choose a favorite because they all feel like they're part of my twisted personality. And if I choose one as a favorite, the others start fighting in my head. So it's kind of a sickness in a way, you know, but it's a good sickness that's worked out for me. I've learned to control it. Thank you.
Hi.
Hello, Steve.
Yes.
Came to talk to you at the Walk of Fame.
I remember.
Hi.
We were so much younger then.
Yeah. Whole thing. I recently watched the Cowboy Bebop movie last night. And it pretty much got me to go buy the Cowboy Bebop series today.
Awesome. I wish I made some money from that.
Yeah. I was going to give it to you. I just wanted to know, what was your favorite episode and why? But
here's the favorite question again. See, that's a problem for me. There are two that come up often for me. One would be Toys in the Attic. Just because it's sort of a standalone piece where it's just the members of the Bebop interacting with each other in a really weird way. Also sort of a nod to Alien. I love that movie, or Aliens. That just sort of holds a warm place in my heart, and we've performed that live as a cast. We've actually done that many times live, so that one is a particular favorite. I like Mushroom Samba also. For the same reasons, just because it's so out there. It's just weird. And then the Bebop movie is probably my favorite thing of all. I love that movie. I just loved everything about it. It was just great storytelling. Thank you. I love the soundtrack of the whole show. I listened to it in my car. Yeah. Yoko Kanno, baby. Yeah. Raj Ramaya. He's sort of an unsung hero. Raj Ramaya wrote Ask DNA, the opening track for the movie. And Raj really doesn't get a lot of credit for that. You know, everything is sort of under the umbrella of Yoko. Not that she's not a genius, and she is, but Raj is one of the people that worked on these albums. Who he comes to cons and he starts playing that, and everybody goes, "Oh my God, that's you!" It's crazy. It's really cool. Yeah.
That soundtrack got me through high school.
Yeah, I listen to it in my car all the time.
Hey Steve, I'm a big fan.
Thank you.
Big. I was wondering, what is your acting background before you had the reputation you do today, and how did you kind of break into the voiceover industry?
Acting zero zip nada. I knew nothing. You might not have been in here, but I was a musician, a really bad one. The acting I learned on the job, and it took me 15 years to learn what a lot of people can learn in 2 or 3 if they have the right training. There are a lot of other ways to learn how to do voice acting now that just weren't available to us. One of the guys was mentioning a minute ago about method acting. I don't do that. I'm an organic guy. I see a character either in printed art form or by description on a page or as described to me by the director, and something pops into my head. I get a visual image of what this character would be like, and I just have to be able to function in that world. And so it's a very organic process to me, much like reading a comic book and hearing the voices of the characters in your head as you're reading it. It's that process for me. So I go back to a very childlike state, to a point where I was literally sitting in a sandbox with a little buddy at 4 years old with an action figure in my hand and creating a whole story around that action figure. That's what I do as a grown-ass man now. But that's what works for me. That's actually what works for me, coupled with the fact that I've been doing it for almost 30 years, so now I have a skill set underneath that to support all that stuff too. You can't just do that. You actually have to learn how to act. So there are much easier ways to do that now. D. Bradley Baker, who's one of the greatest voice actors in the world. Yeah, you can give it up for D, it's all right. Writes this blog piece called iwanttobeavoiceactor.com. And it's one of the greatest free resources for up-and-coming voice actors that has a lot of information on how to get into voice acting, what you need to know, and how the industry functions. And so I always tell people to go there first and read everything he's got to say. Go through it. It'll take you about 6 months if you do it thoroughly. And once you get through all of that, if you're still interested in voice acting, if it hasn't scared you away completely, because it is a business and it's hard and it's time consuming and it takes forever sometimes to actually break in. If you're still interested in doing that, he'll give you information on where to go next and how to get your proper training and the process of doing that. And there are a few people out there who are teaching classes too. Crispin Freeman is a great example, Bob Bergen. There are a lot of really, really great teachers out there doing this stuff. And as far as online, if you can't get to Los Angeles, there are a few people who are doing that. Kylie Bear teaches an online class. I'm actually going to be doing some webinar stuff. We're launching a brand new website coming this fall, and it's called boomboxstudios.com. And I'll be doing webinars that it's affordably priced. So if you get to that point where you really want to learn voiceover, but you don't want to spend thousands and thousands of dollars and be taught by somebody who doesn't do this every day, we have an alternative for you. And if my process doesn't work for you, I can refer you to somebody whose does. And because mine's an organic process, you might be a more cerebral type. So Mary is actually going to be coming in and teaching as well, and she is classically trained. She's got a master's in acting, fine arts. So we'll have that available to you, or we can refer you to somebody else entirely if that's just not working. But there are a lot of options that just didn't exist back then. So you can go online and find all kinds of classes now. The only thing I would caution you is to make sure that whoever is teaching these classes actually does voiceover professionally, as many of them don't. And they will also promise you that they can hook you up with casting people, or they'll promise you a job. Never true. That is almost never true. They can't promise you anything. They can promise to give you the skills and give you the contacts perhaps, but the rest is up to you. Okay, thanks.
Hello, Steve. How are you today?
How are you? I'm good, man.
I'm pretty
Voice.
good. So, my question is, while you were filming Star Wars Rebels, what was the funniest thing that happened while you were filming?
I'm kind of known as Practical Joker on that show. So, a really, really stupid thing that I do all the time is whenever anybody is doing their fight scenes or efforts, especially if it's really emotional, and I love doing it, especially with the girls, with Vanessa and with Tia. If they're going through something and they're going, they're in pain or something, at the end of that, every time, I'll go, I don't know if you can hear it here. Can you pull that in? Or I'll just go, or I'll just do some awful sound, and just to throw them off their game, and that's probably not the funniest thing that's happened, but to me, it's really funny just to try to break their concentration and see how long it takes them to get back into the character. And we're all a family at this point, so we're all constantly playing jokes on each other. Freddie is constantly saying stuff to Taylor to crack him up, or to just take a jab at him. We're really like brothers and sisters on that cast, and to the point where we actually keep in touch with each other wherever we are in the world. So anything that you would do to a brother or sister to annoy them or or try to throw them off their game, you can imagine that stuff happens in that studio.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing that was just another funny little thing that happens in that room is actually coming from the other side of the glass, where all the professionals are supposed to be. You know, the studio executives and the directors and producers and those guys from Lucasfilm, and in some cases Disney, are on the other side of the glass. And sometimes these guys will actually have nerd battles for like an hour to discuss how to pronounce a fruit that they're bringing into the Star Wars universe, because it becomes canon. You know, so there was in the first season, there was a fruit called the Meluron. And I don't know if you guys remember that, for the Star Wars Rebels fans, we must have spent 2 or 3 hours just deciding on how we say Milurun. And everybody was correcting each other in the room. It was ridiculous for a fruit when there's much higher stakes to be talking about. So that's the kind of stuff that I remember from that show that just made it what it is, because we really care that much about it. We want it to be really good, and we wanted it to be heartfelt. And doing things like farting at the end of somebody's emotional scene brings a humanity to the characters and a camaraderie to the characters that we haven't been able to achieve necessarily on every show. So, thanks for asking that.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Carabast.
So how's it going? My name is Aaron, and I am such a huge fan to the point that any show or video game you've ever been in, I immediately go, oh, that's Steve Blum. Like, within a second.
Wow.
I can pick up your voice like no one else. You and Mary, actually, both of them. By the way, you have actually fulfilled my childhood shipping fantasies of Spike Spiegel and Faye Valentine. Thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
I think I have.
Faye is pretty hot, gotta say.
So I did have a question though. At what point did you realize you were kind of a big deal? Was there an epiphany moment, or was it like a slow realization?
Yes, at dinner with my parents, walking up to my dad, say, "Dad, you know, I'm kind of a big deal." And he'd say, "Sure you are. Clean the dog poop." Yeah. Every time you think you're a big deal is when hopefully somebody close to you will be around to smack you down 3 levels to let you know how not a big deal you are. I really tried hard never to think I'm a big deal, especially because there are so many big deals in this industry. You know, just when I think here's a great example. A lot of people will ask me what character I would voice if I had my wish, of characters that I haven't voiced. So I thought about it and I thought, well, I bet I could do a really great Batman, because it's sort of close to my natural voice print. And then I met Kevin Conroy. Oh, guess I'm not that big a deal. Same thing with Goofy. I used to do Goofy on my answering machine all the time. Gosh, how you doing, Mike? And I thought it was pretty good. And then I met Bill Farmer. He's a big deal. So, dude, I hope I never get to that point where I think I'm a big deal, because then I should just stop doing this work. You have to have a sense of humility in this work and just know that you're always replaceable. Everyone is replaceable. There's always somebody out there who can do you as good as you can, or at least as well as you think you can. Nobody's going to be able to replace you if you bring you to the party. But if you're doing like a classic character, for example, Wolverine, for example, I thought I'd do a pretty good Wolverine, but I have to audition every single time I do the voice of Wolverine, because they want to make sure that I'm the big deal they're looking for, I guess. So you can't ever have that kind of attitude. You have to check the ego at the door. But thank you, that's a great question. Michael!
Hey, so my wife and I met you last year at Grand Rapids, Michigan, the Grand Rapids Con. We were dressed up as Zabuza and Haku, and you walked in, we were standing in line, and before you took anything, you were taking your jacket off, and you turned and pointed at us and yelled over everybody and told us that we were awesome. So, little things that people like you do, for the fans, just blow our minds into little tiny pieces that, a year or so later, we're still picking up. And I think that something like this would do it. Would you ever consider dressing as one of your characters at a convention like this?
Actually did.
When?
I've done it 2 years in a row now at San Diego Comic-Con. We did it. I'm sorry. Hey, it wasn't up to me. Toonami guys dressed me up as Tom. They actually hired professional costumers, and they built the costume on my body. It was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever done in my life.
So what you're saying is, as the animation track director, if I do that next year, you might wear it?
I didn't say that. No. But maybe, depending. I don't know. I'm not opposed to it. It just depends on what the context is and how long I have to wear the costume. Because for you hardcore cosplayers, you guys are superheroes to me. I don't know how you walk around in this stuff all day long and just pouring sweat and giant things that are digging into your skin or popping off of your body as you're trying to walk. It's hard. It's really hard. And the first year I did it, they put this helmet on me that they had just glued the faceplate on. And I was breathing these fumes, and it was toxic. I mean, my breath was bad enough, but the fumes inside that thing, and I had to walk like half a mile. We were walking through a bunch of people to get to the panel. And I did a whole panel in costume too. And they forgot to put a breathing hole in the front, or a hole that could even pick up the microphone. So I'm literally lifting up this helmet and shoving it up inside and trying to speak and breathing my own fumes at the same time. It's hard, it's really hard, but yeah, I do it, under the right circumstances.
So I see that you're on Twitter a lot, so if someone, some cosplayer that has a lot of time on their hands, were to tweet you like, hey, I'll make you something with a breathing hole. I mean, it doesn't have to just be like the highest up Toonami, people, does it?
No.
That's a second question, buddy. I asked her, she said I could.
I would consider it, and it depends on where they put the breathing hole.
We'll make you a Wolverine suit. We'll make you a Wolverine suit.
That sounds good, Bob.
Hi, I'm Andy. I feel like a creeper saying this because I've followed your career since I was like 11 years old, from Agito Makishima to Char Aznavour to Spike, of course. Bit part that you did in Macross Plus, so just early fan since I was 11. But recently, the one that's really impacted me and my friends the most is Grayson Hunt in Bulletstorm. So that game is just so off the wall. I absolutely love it. So my question was, how much of that did you actually ad-lib? Because it sounds like you're having a blast doing it.
I did, and I did get to ad-lib some stuff. I made up some dirty words for that game. Most of what he says I can't repeat in this room.
Please tell me that one of the things you ad-libbed was the Robot Pal song.
No, I did not.
Really?
I might have ad-libbed the tune of it, perhaps, but honestly, I don't remember. I'd have to watch it, because I did it there and I let it go, and I'm not a gamer, so I haven't seen it since, and it was a long time ago now. So I would have to review that. If that exists somewhere online, I could review that and then come back and tell you at another panel. But I don't know. But one of the things that I did ad-lib, as far as I remember, was making up a couple dirty words that we used in the advertising campaign to insult the players into buying it. And one of the campaigns that we did online was basically, get up off your mom's couch in the basement and buy this stupid game, you whatever expletive you want to put in there. And we made up some combinations of body parts that really don't go together. And I'm sure you know what that means. Yeah, and kill certain body parts that really you wouldn't think of killing ordinarily. Yeah, or most men would really ask that you not kill them because they might use them for some other thing. But yeah, that was super fun. It was super fun working on that game. Those guys are sick people, and I wish we'd do another one. That was really a fun game. Yeah, so just keep bugging them. Maybe they'll do another one. It's not up to me. I'm just the voice monkey.
Hi, Steve.
Hi.
I just want to ask a question. Is there any voice role that you regret not taking?
No, I'm a voice whore. I've taken pretty much everything. Honestly, there's only one role in my whole career that I turned down, and it was only because I didn't know what it was when they booked me. And they called it Project X at the time. When I went into the studio, they told me that I was going to be a monster, which I play every day. They told me the monster was going to have tentacles, which I play a lot. What I didn't know was that Project X was a hentai. And that this creature with tentacles was doing some awful things to a sweet young girl. And I got about 10 minutes into the thing and I went, oh. Okay, no judgment for whoever's gonna watch this stuff, but I better not do it if I want a career, so. Because I started using my real name at that point. So that's really the only thing. I just said, God bless you guys. This is an interesting form of entertainment and I appreciate it. but I don't want to do this. I got kids, and my kids were really little at the time, and so I just kind of walked out and I said, "You can keep your money, thank you, and enjoy your tentacle, whatever this thing is." So,
what name did you go by before using it?
I used a lot of different names, and mostly, well, at that time, I couldn't afford to support myself, so there were a lot of reasons why I used my name. I didn't think that I was going to do voiceover professionally. I did get paid for it, but very, very little, so I didn't think anybody would care. So I made names just to amuse myself a lot of the time. So shows like Trigun, for example, I was one of the main writers for the show, and I did a couple characters in the show, and I wrote it under my dog's name. So, there are a lot of shows that I did under my kids' middle names. So David Lucas was a name that I concocted, that Brandon Lucas and Jeremy David are my kids' names, and I use their names for them. Sometimes the directors, there's a guy named Kevin Seymour who I did a lot of my early anime with, who just had friends that he wanted their names to get into the show, so he would give me that name on that particular show. And I don't care, nobody's gonna watch this anyway, whatever. And in some cases, people make up names because they've recently joined the union, and once you join Screen Actors Guild, you're not supposed to do non-union work. It's like rule number 1. And at that time in many people's careers, you can't afford to do only union work because you might only get one union job a year. And so many of us would use pseudonyms at that time. Once I could afford to, I stopped doing that as early as I possibly could, very, very early in my career. And I'm actually on committees for the union, and I fight to get games and shows to go union at this point, so I can't officially recommend people ever do that. But pretty much everybody in the industry had to at one point or another.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is...
Really quick, so sorry to interrupt. So we got about 10 minutes left, so we're going to try our best to get through the rest of these questions.
Okay.
So I'm sorry.
Speedier answer, sorry.
Hi, my name is John. We met yesterday.
Yes.
And I just wanted to ask, how did it feel shifting from the breaking the fourth wall Dempsey to the more serious Dempsey in the Call of Duty franchise?
Well, Dempsey is Dempsey. We're still splattering gut bags. And I still hate the Nazi. It's the same guy. It's just a little bit more restrained acting. And in some senses, it was a little more difficult because the bigger, bolder Dempsey, who is basically just shooting at everything he can and drinking Juggernog and hating Richtofen, was an easier thing to play. The bigger, broader things are just easier to play. When you have to sort of pull that in and tell a story and become possibly more vulnerable or more realistic, to me it's a bigger acting challenge. So I actually prefer doing the bigger, broader thing because it's a lot more freeing, but Dempsey's still Dempsey, and I still gotta, play around and hack off heads and stuff, so it was cool. I don't mind either one. I still had a job, so I'm grateful to the Call of Duty guys for hiring me no matter what they did with me. So please hire me again. Oh, you're that guy. Thanks. Hoorah. Hi.
Hey, you mentioned having an interesting experience doing a commercial, and you mostly do voiceover work. I mean, of my knowledge, have you ever really wanted to go into a different industry like film or maybe theater, or is that just not really something that's crossed your mind?
Nope.
No?
Don't want to do it. No, my agent tried to get me to do on camera for many years.
Yeah.
And it's just not my thing. I don't really care about being famous, and I didn't really care about being wealthy, and even getting to this level of fame was a big surprise, and it still kind of freaks me out sometimes. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be recognized on the street necessarily as much as a lot of on-camera people are, because you lose your privacy that way.
Yeah.
And especially because I had kids, I wanted them to have a private life if they chose that. And at this age, I'm just lazy. I don't want to learn lines. And I worked for a film company for many years, and working on a couple of films to get my union card, I realized that you have to be on a set for sometimes 12, 15 hours before you even get up there and do your line, and I'll fall asleep. I'd rather just go into the studio and work. I like to work.
Yeah.
So there are many, many reasons why I don't want to do that. And I don't care to get the recognition from a live audience on stage as a theater performer.
Yeah.
And for some people, they're fueled by that. I don't really need that. I'm very good at just using my imagination, playing with my little toys in the sandbox. Very happy to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, how's it going, Steve?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, you mentioned Logic earlier, and I see you wearing the shirt. I was just wondering, how did you become a part of that album, and what was it like working with Logic?
Oh man, he's one of my dearest friends in the world. He's an amazing young man. He approached me about 2 years ago, right after his first album. And he was a big anime fan. He grew up in Maryland, and he grew up in a very rough environment. He's mixed race, so he had a lot of people coming at him from the white community, from the black community, from hip hop, from his love of gaming and his love of anime, which he had to kind of hide where he lived. So what he wanted to do was just to be able to express himself fully. And he said that in the early days, watching shows like Cowboy Bebop or playing games that I was in made him feel normal. It just made him feel like he could be part of the world and just be who he was. And that's all he ever wanted to be. He didn't want to be judged on whether his skin was light enough or dark enough or any of that stupid nonsense. He just wanted to be who he was and to create. And so he credited me with being a part of his formative years to get him through all of that violent youth, to survive and to create. And I can't take credit for that, but that's how he felt. And so he wanted me to be a part of his next album, The Incredible True Story. And he created this character that's sort of based on Tom or Spike, you know, he's sort of a space captain type of guy. And I was so flattered that he would want this old dude doing his hip-hop album in the first place. I couldn't believe that he wanted me to be part of it. But when he started telling me about his philosophy of peace, love, and positivity and equality, that we're all born equal, but we're not treated equal, he had me right there. I didn't care what the project was, I just said yes. And he's become one of my dearest friends, and he's a crusader for doing the right thing and helping people with anxiety and depression and people who have been suicidal. One of the songs on his most recent album is the 1-800 number for the suicide hotline. You don't see hip-hop artists or anybody doing that out there. And for somebody at his age to be that aware and to do something of such great value is a person I want in my life for the rest of my life. So he is truly family to me, and I will do whatever he asks me to do from now on. And he's my brother. I call him my little brother. So if you haven't heard Logic, and besides that, he is a badass. He is one of the greatest performers I have ever seen. He's amazing. If you haven't seen Logic, check him out. He just won a VMA the other night. Yeah, if you haven't seen Logic, check him out. He's amazing. Yeah. All right, thank you. Hi.
All right, we got a few more minutes. Let's.
Okay, I'll try to do lightning round.
Okay, so two of my favorite characters that you play are Starscream from Transformers Prime.
Thank you.
And Green Goblin from Spectacular Spider-Man, because they're both over-the-top evil, just reveling in how evil they are. But I really also like the roles that you play that are way outside that range, like Leron from Gurren Lagann.
Oh, thanks, hon. When you screw it in, give it a hard mammy twist.
Or Gilmon, like you said earlier, or JP, the kind of younger character from Digimon Frontier. Yeah. You know, do you like playing characters that aren't just gruff, gravelly, badass kind of characters?
I love playing characters that are outside of my normal box, yeah. Especially characters like JP, which... JP was a young kid who was sort of overweight and insecure, and that's exactly who I was when I was growing up. So I love exploring those areas.
Somebody like Leron, I don't get to do that all the time, hun, because people get offended. But I live in Los Angeles, and a lot of us speak this way, so shut up.
And he's a robot mechanic. I love bringing this out into the open. I love all of those characters, so thank you for loving them as much as I do.
Hey Steve.
How are you?
Good. So my question is, on an even battlefield between Spike and Mugen, who would win in hand-to-hand combat?
Well,
I'm not asking you to pick favorites.
I don't think Spike would keep it even because he'd just pull out the gun at some point and shoot. Either that or they just both go out for a beer and say, screw this. It ain't worth it. Yes, sir.
Hi. Since you have such a wide repertoire, how do you pick and choose what you audition for?
I audition for everything they'll let me audition for. My agent, at this point in my career, I can audition for more than some people can. Generally, they'll say, pick your top 3 people and then let them read only like 2 or 3 roles, and they'll give you like 20 roles to choose from. I'll read for all of them. Male, female, beast, I don't care, I'll read for all of them. So I audition more than I do anything else. I read for between 30 and 50 things for each one that I book. So, yeah, so even at this stage of my career, the audition is the job. So, yeah. Hi.
Hello, Steve. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you.
My name is Khalil Dawson, and I got a question. So, for over the past year, I've been dreaming to become a video game designer.
Yep.
I was thinking be a part of Square Enix, where they make mostly Final Fantasy.
Yes.
And I heard this dude named Tatsu Namuro, who's the director of Kingdom Hearts. And he has one of his co-workers, his partner, that partnered with Disney's, that had this game going on over years. So I was thinking, it'd be a partner of Cartoon Network, because I have connection to Cartoon Network Studios, and I was wondering if it'd be a voice actor can partner up by Cartoon Network.
I don't have any power to do anything, dude. I have to audition for every role, and even if I think you're the greatest designer in the world, I can maybe say, hey, I know the greatest designer in the world, and they'll go, okay, great, have them send in a resume. Pretty much that's what it's gonna be, because I literally have no power. I'm just a voice monkey. And it's just like getting any other job. You have to send in your resume, and you have to have the right qualifications, and it has to be a matter of timing too. So unfortunately, I can't advise you in that area, because it's not my area of expertise.
Well, but you are a part of Toonami, right?
Absolutely, but I still have no power. I'm grateful that they still let me do this every week.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Hi.
Hi. So you have you're a very prolific voice actor. I was just wondering, do you have all of these voices still in your head? Like, can you recall them at any moment, or do you have to
Yeah, well,
think about it?
so many of them I don't remember because it was so long ago that I recorded them. But if they play it back for me, I can pop it back that quickly. And that just takes years and years and years of muscle memory in the throat. There was a long time in my career where I wasn't sure what was going to come out before it did. And there were days when I was doing something like Wolverine in the morning and in the afternoon. And I wasn't sure if this was going to come out or this was going to come out. But now I can do it. So, but that just takes time.
Hey Steve, I told you I'd be back.
Hey, welcome.
All right, so everybody always talks about the positive aspects or your favorite roles or the roles that had a large positive impact on your life, but a lot of the creative process for anything are the negatives, the things that hit you hard and not in a positive way. So has there ever been a character that you were disappointed with how it came out, or you wish you could have gone back and redone many years later and I could have played that character better. I could have done a better job there, but it's in the past now. You can't go back.
The way I reconcile that, I did feel that in the early years, but the way I reconcile that is that this is like my autobiography. And I look back at characters. I'm about to watch Bebop again. In fact, I'm going to watch it with Logic. We're going to spend a weekend, we're going to binge the whole show together, because I've never seen it in order. And I know. And yeah, there is. I've never seen it in order, and I saw it for the first time like 8 or 9 years ago, so I don't even remember. So I know that in the process of watching that, I'm gonna go, oh, I could have done a lot better. And this is 18 years ago. I'm a much better actor now. But I know that I'm gonna have to flip that switch constantly as I'm watching that to say, this is who I was at that time. And it is the show it is because I was who I was at that time. And you have to let that judgment go. And if you can do that, you'll be a much more successful person and a successful actor, I think. If you do anything in the arts, it's the same thing for any fine art. I feel like you're going to improve, so why judge yourself on who you were at that time? It's part of your autobiography, and it was that way for a reason.
Thanks.
You're very welcome.
Hey Steve, how you doing, man?
I'm very well, how are you?
Quick question. I'm an amateur voice actor myself, so I wanted to know when it comes to things like warm-ups or dealing with like a really long day of voice acting, how do you maintain your voice or how do you warm up for those kind of things?
Well, I'll start with at the end of the long day, like today, I'm gonna do a whole lot of shutting up tonight. That's all you can do is voice rest. You just have to shut up and stop. Hydrate. No matter where you are in the process, or whether it's in the beginning of the day or the end of the day, make sure that you hydrate, drink a lot of water. Don't drink things like coffee, which will dry you out, or dairy products, which will cause mucus. As far as warm-up exercises, there's a million different kinds of warm-up exercises that you can do. The ones that I prefer are the ones that just sort of warm up my aperture in the morning. And generally when I'm recording Toonami on Monday mornings in my home studio, I'm pretty groggy and the voice is kind of down here. I'm sounding like Ogren or Grunt or something. And I've got to get it up to here to speak like Tom. So I'll warm that up by just doing either humming, so literally just and it sort of feels good. And you can use that as a warm down at the end of the day too. To warm up the aperture, the actual muscles around your mouth, as simple as doing raspberries like you did when you were a little kid. I do that in the car all the way to a session. And also to warm up the muscles around for enunciation, in case you were going to be doing big words and lots of syllables. I just do A, E, I, O, U, ah, baby, bye, bo, boo, ba. I go through the whole alphabet doing that. And it looks so ridiculous in the cars. I usually do that in the car on the way to work, and people just look at me like I'm some creature from outer space, or I'm having a seizure or something. But it really works, and there are a ton of warm-up exercises that you can find online that can help you do that. But you have to find the ones that work for you, because everybody's parts are different. So, but that's the basic things. And then I have throat lozenges that I use also. Some herbal teas are good. Don't drink black tea or green tea, because they're also very drying. But herbal teas like peppermint and things like that, which is just natural stuff, will help to re-lubricate things in there. And then I use Chinese herbal throat drops called Golden Throat, and they're all natural. And I'm not a representative for the company, but they work really well for me.
All right, cool. Well, we're just about out of time, so let's go ahead and give a round of applause for Steve. Where can they find you in the Walk of Fame?
I don't know what the number of the place is. Are they numbered? I don't even know if they're... Back middle. Yeah, back middle, sure.
Back middle.
Yeah, I'm across from RJ Hattie, the great costume and makeup designer. And I'm next to Mary Elizabeth McGlynn and Keith in the cheap seats. So come on back there and see me and say hello if you haven't already. Thank you guys for having me at Dragon Con. This is my first year. I love you all. Thank you so much. And big round of applause for this guy. Be nice to your staff members. Say thank you.
Thank you.